Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and as we've been doing every single day, it's kind of time for a coronavirus update. What is going on in the world? Because it's hard to talk about anything that is going on in the world outside of this topic, since just about everything from finances to law enforcement to death to recovery to everything in between involves this. Even the top trending MMA thing of the Khabib fight again being canceled due to coronavirus, even though they said they would have it no matter what. Now, supposedly, Nurmagomedov cannot get into the country from Russia because we're in sort of a global lockdown state. And to join me to talk about all the madness is one half of MediaRoots.org. He's also got a great channel called A Very Heavy Agenda, where he's been doing a lot of MAME politics. It's Robbie Martin. How the hell are you, Robbie?
Doing all right, Jason. How are you? How have you been?
I'm all right. I guess there's a lot to get into since our last conversation. We have seen this kind of slow rollout of self-isolation and soft martial law, but so far, the most boots on the ground, military door by door knock martial law that we've seen in Rhode Island at least has been challenged. Now, I don't know whether that's staged. I'm not saying trust Cuomo. I'm not saying that my opinion on what's really going down has changed either. But I've also seen some positive pushback in the realm of New Jersey, where tomorrow you'll be able to buy a gun again. And I think that these issues are important ones on the ground, because no matter how much a politician has sold his soul and no matter how gangster they truly are, there are some out there that are probably smart enough that don't want to go the full track, trace, database, martial law, in your face route, Robbie. Maybe I'm wrong, but let people know what your opinion has been on this past week.
Well, I mean, I feel like we're still just all waiting for the bomb to drop. I guess we're we haven't hit Italy's levels yet, but we finally hit 3,000 deaths today in the U.S., and now we have the highest rate of infections. And there's just all this political nonsense sort of going back and forth still about, that why are we blaming, the U.S. for being so incompetent about this when we had the best testing and all this shit? It's like, no, we totally fucked this up. So I don't know, my opinions are all over the place. But in terms of just what you specifically mentioned, Jason, like the way that the governments are responding to this and the loss of our civil liberties, I feel like New York City and New York State are still going to experience it in a severe way, regardless of what Andrew Cuomo has been saying. So even though there might be some positive developments in the other direction, I'm not so sure that it's going to happen nationwide anymore. I was initially, but now I feel like it's maybe just going to be on a state-by-state basis, that they're going to really lock things down. But I still feel like we haven't seen the worst of this, Jason. So I'm trying not to, be too alarmist about it, but at the same time, like I feel like the worst is yet to come. So I'm not sure.
Well, let me say this to you, Robbie. I think that the national lockdown, at least on the levels militarily, like I said, there would be different levels of that. But what's happening here in New York State that I'm watching right now is a slow rollout. Remember, we're now having medical centers being built up in Central Park. He's talking about moving patients from the city to upstate New York. Broome County Arena has now been converted to a medical hospital. My local hospitals are now filling up, and the people that are working there are working extra hours already. The Hampton Inn, which is local here, is having people come in. So I'm seeing it firsthand. I know there are a lot of people out there that say that nobody's dying, that they want to believe that China only had 3,000 casualties, even though we're at that level right now. But again, they're patting you on the head and they're saying, oh, well, we're just going to move it back to April 30th, right? So what are your feelings on the Trump press conferences in particular?
I mean, just kind of astonishing. Like, I actually didn't watch the one from today, so I can't really comment on it, but I did see that he brought the My Pillow guy to the podium, which, people say that Trump is a narcissist or he has authoritarian tendencies. But like when I see stuff like that, I'm just like, it just almost seems like he's a nihilist. Like, who would do that? Like, what would even be the purpose be of bringing the My Pillow guy to this press conference in the middle of a global pandemic? It's just one of the weirdest, most nonsensical things ever. But I mean, he's still talking about ratings. It seemed like he had a glimmer of reality and humanity hit him like several weeks ago, and now it just seems like he's back to his old shtick. So that's what's weird to me, is he's kind of back to, the political kind of crap, like just jabbing people and stuff. So
Yeah, but that's what he knows. I mean, the cutie pie comment. At the same time, though, he's sliding in things like, well, if we only have 100,000 deaths in the United States, we'll have done a good job. That's a pretty bold statement. And I want to get to the timeline in a second, but we've got a great super chat here, Robbie, from Nick Waits. And this is directed towards you, my friend. My condolences for your loss, Robbie. COVID-19 took my mustache from us too soon. Hashtag Burmese Brigade. And this may be the first time I've ever seen Robbie Martin without a mustache and a beard. This is what I want to talk about first. All right. I want to get into the obvious hoaxings that are going around. For instance, everybody is acting as though because some of these hospitals aren't overwhelmed outside, or because we're seeing videos of people walking down corridors of hospitals for 2 or 3 minutes, and like it's not chaos in the United States, that the deaths aren't happening, right?
It's the where's the blood argument all over again.
But here's the thing. No one's saying that our hospital system has been overwhelmed yet. In fact, Cuomo has said he's opening Javits tomorrow for these people. So, here's my question. Will people start to own up to it when there's real health workers in there and there's real bodies for some real reason that this is a real thing? Because right now, like, this is one of the biggest memes that's going around. It's that ABC and CBS reported that this picture, one is from Italy and one is from New York. Look, first of all, I don't know what exactly they said. They could be, that's Sky News, by the way. One's Sky News, one's ABC. They could have made a mistake. They're running real footage. That doesn't mean that hospital beds are not filling up. But the other thing about it is that, there's information out there by doctors that are being suppressed just on the antivirals alone. Right here is a chart of, on the top line are patients with COVID-19 given no treatment. The middle line is the hydroxychloroquine only. And then the bottom line, where there was a huge drop, was the hydroxychloroquine plus the Z-Pak. I've talked about numerous other antivirals that are out there. The vitamin C and hydrocortisone treatment also seem, a steroid treatment on top of vitamin C, also seems to be doing well. Why should we be focusing on the death and ventilators? Shouldn't we be focusing on those type of treatments as soon as possible for people that test positive? Now, I think there are problems, Robbie, with the way we're testing. I'm not sure what we're testing for, what the uniformity of those tests are, etc. I understand when people get into numbers hysteria, but I don't think that you can visually hoax something like this across China, Iran, Spain, Italy, even Moscow now, and Russia, where they're locking things down. And the real lockdown just started in Italy. So one of the things that I know you focused on is that now there's a narrative that this is, China saying it's a U.S. bioweapon, Iran saying it's a U.S. bioweapon, and then people like Tom Cotton are saying this thing was unleashed by China. Now, they're not saying the word bioweapon, but Tom Cotton has been one that was vocal about this virus months ago, talking about the Lancet study and the possibility of it being a biological weapon. Do you think the narrative of the biological weapon will be promoted by mainstream figures in our government and media at some point and be directed at China as well?
I think absolutely. I mean, I think we have to remember that this is, this is kind of like a slow motion 9/11 on steroids. It's going to be used by nefarious people the same way that 9/11 was used. And perhaps it'll be even used worse. I mean, I was discussing this on the last podcast with Abby that, 9/11, if you really boil it down, the narrative of that was, Muslims attacked us on 9/11, and now we need to eradicate Islamic terrorism across the world to defend our country. We need to fight them there before they get us here. This is more like China destroyed the world and they need to be stopped. Like that China literally broke the world and now they need to be stopped. Like that's how powerful the narrative could become at a certain point. And let me just tell you something that Tom Cotton actually said on Fox News last week. He said, China unleashed this plague on the world, and there will be a reckoning when we're on the backside of it. I mean, that rhetoric is not coming out of a vacuum. Tom Cotton has long been a vessel for these neoconservative think tanks in D.C. He used to be a vessel for people like Bill Kristol, but since Bill Kristol's a never Trumper now, you don't see Bill Kristol going after China or Iran right now. But you'll see Tom Cotton, going on Fox News and celebrating that Trump is actually doing the best things for Israel he's ever seen any president do, doing the most aggressive things towards Iran he's ever seen any president do. So this is what I described, Jason, as almost like a neocon split. The neocons also always used to be sort of on the same page, but now what we're seeing is a lot of these people who wanted to do the Asia pivot, perhaps more strongly than people like Bill Kristol, who would have rather have focused on Russia and Putin, those people are now sort of having their time to come out, their little coming out party, to really utilize this fear. I mean, that's what we have to really remember, is that they'll utilize the fear. And the fear right now is still so intense, even though some days, maybe even myself, I'm like, oh, I feel fine today. And then I'll look at the fucking numbers again and I'll be like, shit, this is really, really scary. And it's not stopping. How much longer can we handle the mental stress of this? So that's what neocons are really good at doing. Almost like kicking us when we're down, manipulating us when we're at our weakest point. Now, there's so much, it gets so much worse too. And, people write off Steve Bannon as being this fringe figure who's this guy who, helped popularize populism and sort of what Trump's campaign was defined by, even though Trump says that he deserves all the credit for it. Mm-hmm. But Steve Bannon, generally speaking, is not someone you think of as being a neocon or a foreign policy hawk. What's strange, Jason, is I didn't realize that Steve Bannon has been literally dedicating the last 3 years of his life. He's been inside the Trump administration for a little bit, but most of the time he's been out of it, spending his energy on anti-China propaganda. And I'm not kidding. He actually said on his podcast that I was listening to the other day that he spends 30% of his time, literally out of his day, connecting with Chinese activists and anti-CCP exiles from China. Mm-hmm. That's straight out of the John McCain Russia playbook. That's Magnitsky Act shit. It's almost really textbook what he's doing. And what's strange, Jason, is I feel like Steve Bannon is someone who actually is very critical of the neocons, but at the same time, he's sort of learning from them. And he has this podcast that's been going since January 25th called War Room Pandemic, where every single episode on it is about China and how they're responsible for basically, destroying the world. And he has on people like Tom Cotton, like Rubio, even people like Stephen Hatfield, which is kind of strange. I've been looking into him more recently and why he's spreading so much propaganda about China right now. But he also has on this very strange figure that I just recently discovered named Bill Gertz. Now, Bill Gertz is actually responsible for getting this viral China bioweapon theory into the hands of people like Tom Cotton, onto Fox News channels like Laura Ingram's show or Tucker Carlson's show. Bill Gertz wrote this article in the Washington Times about 3 weeks before anybody from the Chinese or Iranian government said anything about the U.S. being behind coronavirus. The article actually leans on an Israeli intelligence official saying that this Wuhan biosafety level 4 lab is obviously a bioweapons lab and that everybody knows it and there's plenty of proof for it, even though, let's just say it right here, there is no actual proof, hard evidence that that's what it is. This is what people have just been insinuating for years.
Sure.
Yes, some experts have said that, but it's still not a proven thing.
Well, let's just say this. I think it's naive, number one, to think that biological warfare has not been a thing in first, second, and sometimes even third world nations now for decades, right? And by the way, thank you for that sticker, possessed. I appreciate that. Now, no matter where you think this virus came from, it has the markings of a biological weapon. Again, it doesn't seem to be killing a lot of kids or infants. We had an infant supposedly die that tested positive for COVID-19 2 days ago in Illinois. A lot of people want to challenge me on that, but I'm just going with what the mainstream is saying. However, who's suffering the most? Who's getting the sickest? It's males 18 to 49 are at least getting infected the most, and then it seems to be the elderly that are going out in the biggest numbers. But again, the infections are coming with men. We know there are at least some detriments after the fact for those that suffered this and got over it, right? We've seen the
lung damage.
Yes, the lung damage, which is like cystic fibrosis. There's now studies saying that it may be attacking the testicles and testosterone. We don't know a lot about it. But here's the problem. All those narratives you just talked about is nation state versus nation state. And that's not what I believe this is, because even if it isn't the bioweapons lab in Wuhan, and let's say it's a bioweapons lab in the United States, or somewhere else where it doesn't seem to matter, or in Israel, right? Sure. Whoever leaked this isn't necessarily a nation state. And we talked about, moving the goalpost and when is this going to end? Well, I thought it was really interesting to think to myself, well, geez, we're at the end of March. When is this going to end? We got a lot of first world nations in lockdown. What's going to happen with Bilderberg? And I was thinking, right around now, people would have been searching to see when that was. Well, turns out I go to their, somebody fishes it out for me yesterday, and they postponed the meeting. Well, what does that mean? The earliest Bilderberg ever is May 15th, okay? But it's been as late as the first week of July. So with them not rescheduling it, that tells me that first world nations, at least, are going to be in some sort of a lockdown where, globalists and their representatives can't travel until at least July. No one in our country is talking about that timeline as a reality, except for Cuomo every once in a while, de Blasio every once in a while, certainly not Trump. And I think a lot of that has to do with milking the economy for whatever it's worth and stopping the panic as the military infrastructure comes into play, Robbie. I really believe that. I hope there's more pushback. I want to believe that Cuomo is the lovable gangster that will sue Rhode Island if they keep doing door-to-doors with the National Guard. But then I see videos today out of Oakland where there's 300 people in a supposed lockdown in the middle of the street doing car tricks. And you wonder, well, how do you ever really lock those people down if it's not with the military? So I look at it this way. There are people that are in dream world that think that there isn't a consortium of globalists that are, peak eugenicists and would have a wet dream over killing 100,000 or 100 million people, or even worse in this world, right? Now, to say they wouldn't pull the trigger and then force decisions like martial law on people, also, they would love to see martial law in this country. A guy like George Soros would love to see it. For instance, what are they pushing today? Johnson & Johnson's going to have that vaccine. We got it for you. Well, they're sitting at the Event 201 table. And so is Tom fucking Inglesby of the Johns Hopkins Center. He's sitting at that table. And they wrote a paper that the U.S. was #1 and we were ready for this. And who else is sitting there? George Gao of the CDC in China, the same person that's telling us that only 3,000 people died there. And I'm supposed to believe Stephen Rice from the CDC while he's sitting there. And these are the people they want you to trust, and they sit there and gloat how they're going to invest in nations and we need to look to world government. And then you got puppet parrots like Gordon Brown saying the same damn thing. So, I mean, do you think there's even a snowball's chance in hell that they go online with Bilderberg? Because I don't, because after I did the video, Robbie, Bilderberg took down their official website today. It's so weird. Been down all day. Ever since I posted the video to social media, it no longer says the meeting's postponed. It's just really bizarre.
Let's just say, Jason, that I don't think they even need to have it this year, because on some level they must have had an even more secret meeting, because that 220 CEO resignations in January of 2020 alone is one of the most suspicious things I've ever seen in my life. So they obviously knew something and had some kind of meeting with some people that were like, this shit's gonna really fucking break down. You need to get ready, drop stocks, whatever. Get into your food bunkers. And Piero Midyar, the guy who runs The Intercept, he's one of these doomsday prepper oligarchs, and he's got a fucking Molokai food bunker. But no, I think you're right about the nation state thing. I think that's why it's so cynical. I think that what's more troubling to me, just in terms of the geopolitics of the way the U.S. is looking at this, and the way the Trump administration is probably looking at this, and the way these people like Tom Cotton are playing around right now, is they're playing with fire, Jason, because just like 9/11, we could see how inflammatory this rhetoric can be and what it can actually evolve into. And, I think that's why we're really getting into the weeds when we talk about how racist it is that Trump is calling it China virus, when the only reason he's probably calling it that is because that's how he's interpreting, the same kind of shit that he was interpreting from Frank Gaffney and these people before.
Well, Pompeo used it as the talking point when he did. So I'm sure they're sitting there going, look, just like China is directing this at us, we have to direct it back at them, because people see in red and blue, conservative and liberal, right and left, communist and Democrat. So it's very simple. It's a talking point that clicks in the brains of the masses, into the simpletons, and they're like, it came from China. And they're like, yeah! And his base is like, yeah! Even more. I mean, that's on one level, Robbie. The Q thing is on the other level, like over the top. I mean, why don't you give, because I've said my piece on this. Why don't you give me your view on those people that are now clamoring for martial law, are happy the economy is tanking, and believe that medical ships will be used as jails for the hundreds of thousands of indictments to take the enemy to Gitmo. Go.
Well, I'm learning that last thing for the first time. That's interesting. The medical ships are jails. Okay. Well, I guess first of all, I'll just say that I have enough emotion and empathy inside me, even though I think some of these people have made complete fools of themselves and helped tank the conspiracy movement in the last 3 years. I still worry about them actually putting themselves and their families in danger and possibly risking their own lives by not taking this shit seriously enough. It's not just the flu. A lot of these same people cross over with those people, Jason, you were talking about, who are spreading around those videos of empty triage tents outside hospitals and being like, look, this is a hoax because no one's filling them up yet. It's like, it's just, anyways, the fucking QAnon thing is just so frustrating, because I think on some level it does sort of reveal, that thing that debunkers used to accuse us of being, Jason, that actually does ring true for the QAnoners, that when it comes to something as chaotic and as uncontrollable and as awful as this situation, it's just like they need to hold on to this sort of faith in something, trust the plan, trust that it's not really serious and that your family's going to be safe. And I'm worried that it's going to take one of their family members actually getting COVID-19 until they actually take this seriously, And sadly, I think even some of those people will be like, oh my God, my sister who got COVID-19, she might be a secret pedo and is being secretly executed right now by the deep state because I believe in QAnon. I mean, that's how fucking messed up in the head some of these people have gone. And I think it's just important to remember mental health right now, if we're going to be stuck indoors for months, is super important. And if you know anyone who's just reading QAnon stuff nonstop, just try to like ground them, like just try, because it's gonna get worse.
Mhm.
You know,
Every
mental
one of them's
illness
telling
or
us it's going to get worse. That's the other thing. Like that's the whole thing of us treating them like us children. They're like, it's going to get worse, then it gets better, and you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute. A lot of people have been out of work for 3 weeks already. What do you mean it's going to get worse before it's going to? And it just doesn't click with people because we have this mechanism in our brain where we can't deal with the fact that we're going to die one day. All right, that's really going to happen. And we've kind of been fed this novel, this story that disaster can't come to America. Disaster don't come to America, Robbie. America goes on a rampage around the world wherever it damn well pleases because we're number one. We got the Tiger King in this motherfucker. What are you thinking? Like, that's how people really believe. Hold on, we got a super chat here. Michael Benson, thank you. He says, Professor Francis Boyle explains the coronavirus bioweapon genesis in this YouTube video. I've watched several of Boyle's videos on it, and honestly, I do think he's one of the more grounded people on what this thing is, how deadly it is, it being a bioweapon, etc. I'd say Boyle is pretty decent on that. I don't know about his politics or where it actually originates from, because there are still people out
anthrax.
there. What's that?
He's good on anthrax,
Yeah.
so I trust what he has to say. I didn't quite fully understand. I've watched some of his breakdowns on it, and I didn't fully follow what he was saying. But I mean, this also has a lot of similarities to the anthrax blame attribution, where they were trying to rush to blame it on Saddam Hussein, for a long time, and Colin Powell held up that vial at the UN. So, who knows where this is going to go? I think that the Trump administration is probably too uncoordinated and not organized enough to pull off something like the Bush administration did with Iraq in regards to China. But I still think it can go into dangerous areas, and we need to watch out for it. And I think it's also infiltrated parts of conspiracy media. I mean, we know Alex Jones talks about the Chi-coms all day long, like they're our greatest threat. And he believes that they're in cahoots with everybody else, the mainstream media, the globalists, against Trump, So it's sort of this whole narrative that's, I think, is really kind of wide ranging, that kind of sweeps across the whole conspiracy movement, that we also need to watch out for.
I completely agree. Because when you look at China, it's the beta test, right? And what are they saying? We need to have more locations. We need to have more tracking, tracing, databasing. We're going to put drones out there. We need social distancing. That's a frightening term to me. That's all of a sudden been the new term. That's the cultural movement globally of social distancing. I do the IPTV thing, so I watch European and Canadian television, and I see their commercials, and it's Burger King, it's Subway, everybody's delivering, or you get it DoorDash, and we want that social distancing, and I just feel like, we're gonna be in some weird pseudo Twilight Zone version of Demolition Man, where we lose a lot of our human contact after this, dude. And I think that's craziness, and I really hope that the psychological warfare on top of what we're about to endure doesn't allow that to happen. But hey, man, these are strange times. The times they are a changing, Robbie.
I mean, I think what you're saying about Demolition Man, one of the main things I thought about, Jason, is just like non-corporate businesses. I mean, mom and pop shops were already disappearing all over the country at a rapid or exponential rate, and now this is really going to kill a ton of them. Mm-hmm. The cities and towns around the country that have a ton of mom and pop shops still around. There's a city near me called Alameda that's sort of like it's on a little island next to Oakland. It's mostly mom and pop shops there. After this, sadly, I could see an entire town like that being completely corporatized, where the corporations just come in, the vulture capitalists, and they're like, look, we can buy up all this cheap property now. Like it's over for a lot of those mom and pop businesses. And that's a really sad thing. It's only going to be the biggest companies and the biggest sort of capitalistic entities that are able to survive beyond this. And that's a really bummer thing. And just like in terms of the classes of people in society, the richest people, the most well-off people, will probably be able to ride through this if they're not infected with it. People who, lost their job and don't have money saved in the bank, they're going to be hit the hardest by this. I mean, it sucks. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that.
Callie Callahan is in imagination land and is saying coronavirus is completely made up. Do you agree? Clearly, if you didn't watch the broadcast, I don't agree with that, because you don't lock down cities like Wuhan. You don't lock down cities in Italy and Spain, and you don't have massive death in Iran where you can see the graves from space in a global hoax where Poot Poot over in Moscow also builds makeshift hospitals and dons a suit that looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. So no, I would say get a little sunlight, walk around, breathe deeply, and realize that I do not believe this whole thing is totally made up. I don't. Whether the numbers are exaggerated, whether we're dealing with different types of COVID, I can only say that the response so far, yes, has been a lot worse than the disease had to be. 100%. But again, when you're dealing with biological warfare and you're dealing with non-nation states and even our own intelligence systems, such as the FBI, the CIA, MI5, MI6, Mossad, contract their business out to Booz Allen Hamilton, to Stratfor, to Black Cube, you've created so much murkiness and plausible deniability in this thing and confusion that people like you exist. And I'm sorry for you. Ryan Bonzen, thank you for the super chat. Robbie, we've done a half an hour. Is there anything else on this subject that you'd like to talk about that you think is important, that's on the horizon, that you need to share with people?
I'd just like to call out some names out there. People may not realize how influential that they are. I already mentioned Steve Bannon, Tom Cotton. I'll mention Bill Gertz again. It's with a Z. Look him up. He's a very influential anti-China expert, I like to call him, even though people call him a China expert. The guy from The Hill, who's also part of the Hudson Institute, Sagar Ingenetti, I think his name is, has been putting out some pretty inflammatory rhetoric. Sam Harris, who's normally considered a liberal, someone of the left persuasion, is saying that China bio-attacked us through their filthy wet markets, and we need to put a stop to it. So, there's a lot of this rhetoric that's floating around out there that's not just among the right. People like Cernovich, Jack Posobiec are also putting out this rhetoric, but it's also people like Matt Stoller, who's sort of like a influential left, figure who criticizes Wall Street. Is kind of like a Matt Taibbi-like figure. He's kind of going down this anti-China rabbit hole right now, putting out some pretty insidious rhetoric. So I just want people out there to be careful of what you're hearing. Just like any other situation that these foreign policy hawks take advantage of, this is a really inflammatory situation. And this inflammatory rhetoric, I would prefer to wait it out and actually to learn what happened through like thorough investigations. I'm not going to act on emotion. I'm not going to play into that based on emotion. But I do know that there's a lot of people cynically taking advantage of the situation. And a lot of the same people were involved in PNAC. I mean, James Woolsey is one of these people as well. Frank Gaffney. They have a think tank also that I recommend people check out. It's only convened 4 other times in history. It's called the Committee on the Present Danger. When they first convened under the Truman and Eisenhower administrations, it was about stopping the détente with the Soviet Union. Over time, about 40 of their members from the Committee on the Present Danger went into various presidential administrations. And right now, Jason, they reconvened last year. Steve Bannon somehow is in charge of it, which is odd. And Frank Gaffney and James Woolsey are also have high up positions in it. And it's called the Committee on the Present Danger China. They actually changed their name for the first time. So I recommend people look into that think tank and check out the characters, and also be careful of what you read out there from the Epoch Times, which is a really fascinating website that somehow bought up 70% of all of YouTube's advertising. If you
they call themselves the Epic Times, by the way.
Oh, is that what it's actually pronounced?
Yeah, but I know it's spelled Epoch, but yeah.
But they bought 70% of all advertising revenue on, not revenue, but time on YouTube. So if you go in with a not signed in account right now and pull up ads, 70% of them will be from their
Wow.
website, which is crazy.
Wow. You know what? And just to go back with think tanks, because you mentioned PNAC, people have to realize that part of their strategy, it wasn't just, a global event like a new Pearl Harbor. They talked about biowarfare in that as well, and bioweapons being used in these new type of wars. Hebro, he has a great super chat that you'll like, Robbie. He says, we need corporate distancing now because those giants are swallowing their competitors. And remember, I said from the very beginning, this is going to be a massive, massive consolidation of power for the Predator class, no matter what you believe. That's why it is 1929 plus 9/11 in a slow rollout equals COVID 1984. One more super chat. You're forgetting about the potential for a dollar reset. Yes, I agree, to a one world currency. We have talked about that previously in our last broadcast. U.S. government benefits by taking away Constitution. Other countries get more say in global monetary system UN operation hoax. I agree that's a great possibility. And a lot of those Q people are like pointing to that Bloomberg opinion piece where it says Donald Trump just nationalized the Federal Reserve. Well, maybe they're getting ready to collapse the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve note and bring in some type of digital currency. They tried to pass it in that first bill. His name is Robbie Martin. And guess what, folks? His YouTube channel is a very heavy agenda. I'm going to put that in the mix. Can we get him to 3,000 subscribers? My goodness, guys. Come on, Burmese Brigade. Let's get it going. And then you can check him out.
Bring me to 3K.
Let's do it. Media Roots. Also where you can find them. Robbie, thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully we'll be talking about better things soon, my friend, because times are definitely strange. We're definitely going to keep in touch and keep doing this. All right, brother?
Sounds great, Jason. And I just want to tell people I have a 2-part Media Roots Radio podcast coming out about the neocons and their rush to blame China and spin propaganda about it. Coming out very soon.
Excelente, my friend. I will be on the lookout for it. Thank you very much. Later on, Robbie. Guys, you can support me over on the GoFundMe. That's how I'm doing it financially. We'll start another one on the 1st, but hey, $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. I was very happy to actually hit that goal this month. As a lot of you know, I prepped for this. There's 6 months of supplies for me and my family. We're not going to be on any kind of new 2020 style bread line. I can promise you that. I am a documentary filmmaker. All of my films are free right here in the documentaries playlist section. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. And make sure you thumbs this video up, subscribe, and share. Join the Burmese Brigade. Let's make it to 50,000 plus strong. Tomorrow night, I will be on a roundtable with Titus Frost and a bunch of unknown guests. I'm sure there's going to be people on there that hate my guts, but quite frankly, because it is a roundtable on coronavirus, I think it's important to go on that and give my opinion, give my evidence, and try to reach as many people as possible. I love you guys, and I will see you on the flip side.